I brought the blanket. White cotton, soft edge, one blue thread stitched along the hem. I don't even know why I brought it. Maybe because I thought I'd be holding her today. Nathan met me in the lobby with 2 cups of hospital coffee. "Mom," he said, nodding, like we were at a grocery store. His eyes didn't match his voice, flat, as if he'd already had the conversation in his head and was just waiting for me to catch up. "She's gone," he said, handing me the cup. I didn't take it. I looked past him toward the hallway. "What do you mean gone?" "She was born this morning," he said. Too calm. There were complications. She's deaf. I blinked. "So where is she?" He glanced at the floor like it had answers. "We gave her up. Vanessa signed everything. It's done." I heard a door open behind him. Vanessa walked out, hair still damp, hospital bracelet flashing on her wrist. She saw me and barely paused. She wouldn't have had a normal life, she said. "We can't raise a damaged child." I couldn't feel my legs. I asked for her name. Nathan looked at Vanessa. She shook her head. "She didn't need one," he said. I stood there with the blanket still folded in my arms. I hadn't even unwrapped the ribbon. I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked past them both down the hall, hoping irrationally that maybe someone forgot to tell the truth. But the bassinet was empty. There was no bracelet, no chart, no child. Later, I sat in the parking lot with the blanket still untouched beside me. The name they never gave her echoed anyway, unspoken and unfinished. I started the car and drove home, windows down, letting the wind fill the silence. By the time I reached my street, I already knew I would not forget her. They told me the adoption was closed. Final. No names, no updates, no photos. I wasn't family anymore, at least not in the way the law measured it. I asked if I could leave something behind, a letter, a keepsake, anything small. The nurse at the discharge desk hesitated, glanced around, then leaned in slightly. "She was signed out as Eleni," she whispered. "That's all I can tell you. Eleni." I didn't even thank her. I just nodded and walked out, repeating it under my breath, like a prayer I hadn't known I'd been waiting to say. Eleni, Eleni, Eleni. At home, I pulled out a fresh notebook. On the first page, I wrote her name 12 times, then again the next morning and the next. I stopped bringing the blanket to the table, but I kept the notebook there beside my coffee. One day I found myself on the library computer watching a video titled Basic ASL Greetings. The woman in the video had kind eyes and slow, careful hands. I mimicked her every motion, feeling ridiculous at first. But I didn't stop. I printed flashcards and taped them above the sink. I signed in the mirror. I joined a community class sitting in the back, the oldest by at least 2 decades. I didn't care. My fingers ached that first winter, but I kept going. Slowly the sign stuck. Thank you. Want. Girl. Beautiful. The one that meant remember always made me pause. She was 12 days old when they signed her away. She'd never heard her name. She'd never seen a face that looked like hers and called it home. But she had a name now. I had it. And that meant she wasn't lost. Not completely. One night, while practicing the sign for daughter, I looked at my hands and realized they no longer shook. They moved with memory, with purpose. I flipped to a fresh page in the notebook and wrote her name once more, this time in all capital letters. Eleni. 12 years isn't a blur, it's slow. Slow like winter light through thick curtains. Slow like the shape of hands forming words no one in your house understands. I filled notebooks. I volunteered at summer camps. I read bulletin boards, obituaries, blog posts from adoptive families. Some days I almost convinced myself she was happy wherever she was. Other days I didn't care. I just wanted to find her. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in early fall. I had just come back from picking up library donations. My phone rang with a number I didn't know, and I almost let it go to voicemail. "Mrs. Drew," a woman's voice asked. "This is Sarah Lindstrom. I'm a language therapist at Greenbrook School for the Deaf in Virginia. I hope I'm not overstepping. Your name came up during a research query linked to regional ASL programs. I froze. There's a girl here. She's about 11. Bright, quiet. She sleep talks sometimes, or maybe sleep signs. I'm not sure it matters. But there's a phrase she repeats. Over and over. What phrase? I said, barely breathing. Pineapple milk, she said. I dropped into a chair. The floor seemed to shift. Sarah continued. It's nonsense, but it came up in a volunteer's search of linguistic imprints. Your name was flagged in a transcription database from years ago. A public sign language class, maybe. My mouth was dry. Pineapple milk, I whispered. I used to say it to her. When she was in the womb, I'd lean close to Vanessa's stomach and just say it. No one else heard it, not even Nathan. The woman on the phone was silent for a moment. I think she remembers, she said softly. She doesn't know why. I booked a bus ticket to Virginia that night. I packed the same notebook, now worn and softened at the edges. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew the phrase had made it through. Somehow, it had reached her, and that meant I could too. They let me volunteer twice a week, library organizing, snack duty, reading to the younger ones if they wanted it. I didn't ask about her. I didn't ask for photos. I just waited. The first time I saw her, she was sitting alone on the edge of the playground, her fingers absently tracing letters in the mulch. She looked like no one else, and exactly like him. Nathan's same dark lashes, his crooked mouth, and when her sleeve shifted, I saw it, the birthmark. Small oval just under her shoulder. Nathan had one in the exact same spot. I walked back inside, hand pressed flat against my chest, like I was holding something in. A week later, I filed for a DNA test through quiet legal channels. I didn't tell anyone, not the school, not the staff therapist, not the girl. I just needed confirmation. It came back in a plain envelope. 99.9%. She was his. She was mine. The next time I saw her, she was helping another student zip their jacket. Patient. Focused. I crouched beside her with slow, steady hands. I'm your grandmother. I signed. She blinked. Her eyes flicked to my hands, then to my face. I don't know you, she signed back. I nodded. I didn't try to explain. I didn't rush in with stories or names or pieces of the past she never asked for. I just sat beside her while the recess bell rang and she ran inside with the others. That night, I walked to the grocery store and bought a small box of pineapple juice. I left it on the porch step outside my borrowed apartment, unsure if I was offering it to her or to the version of me that had waited 12 years to meet her eyes. I didn't go back to the school the next day. I went to the courthouse instead. The judge granted me temporary custody without much struggle. Her foster parents didn't object. I signed every paper with a hand that didn't stop shaking until I walked out of the courthouse. When I picked her up from school that Friday, she got into the car without a word. No questions, no glances, just a seatbelt click and the sound of her backpack hitting the floorboard. She didn't speak the entire drive home. She didn't look out the window. She just stared at her hands. At the house, I gave her the larger room. Sunlight fell across the quilt I'd laid out, but she stood in the doorway for a full minute before stepping inside. She didn't unpack. She closed the door without a sound. I didn't follow. That first week, I kept everything quiet. I cooked simple food. I left the hallway light on. I placed clean towels outside her door each night and freshened the linens when she wasn't looking. Every morning, I signed good morning in the kitchen, whether she was there or not. The pineapple juice sat in the fridge. I never mentioned it. She avoided eye contact. When we passed in the hall, she turned her body just enough to signal a boundary I didn't try to cross. But I kept signing. One phrase a day. One hand shape, one motion, placed carefully into the air like folded paper. She didn't respond. Not even a nod. One afternoon, I heard her door open and close 3 times before she finally came into the kitchen. She didn't sit, just stood near the counter looking at the corkboard I'd pinned vocabulary cards to. She signed one word cat, then turned and walked away. I erased the board that night and started again slower this time. Something had shifted. I didn't call it progress. I didn't call it anything. But I woke the next morning an hour earlier, just to be in the kitchen with my hands ready. She only spoke to the cat, not out loud, but in small, quick signs, pointing, flicking her fingers near her chin, brushing her palm toward the floor when he jumped on the counter. I watched from the hallway more times than I admitted. So I started watching the cat, too. I matched his responses to her signs and copied them later in front of the mirror. After a week, I'd learned how to sign stop hungry and no scratching. The cat mostly ignored me, but Eleni didn't. She noticed. It started with a single correction, 2 fingers tapping her chin, then pushing forward. "Thank you," she showed me silently. I nodded, tried again. She didn't leave the room. Then came the second sign, more. I was offering her another helping of rice, and she didn't speak, didn't nod, just signed it. More. Clear, firm, without apology. I nearly dropped the ladle. That night, as we were washing dishes, she dried each plate with focus. Then out of nowhere, she signed, "What's pineapple milk?" I froze, then laughed, and then I cried. "It's nothing," I said, voice shaking. "It's everything." She didn't ask again. But the next morning, a drawing appeared on the fridge, 2 pineapples and a glass of milk. No signature. From then on it was slow but steady. She helped me edit flyers for a bake sale at the library, showed me the casual signs other teens used, slang I'd never seen in textbooks. She corrected my fingers without embarrassment. I pretended not to get emotional each time she touched my wrist. One evening I found her sitting at the table flipping through my old ASL notes. She didn't say anything, just kept reading. When I sat beside her, she didn't move away. She signed cold and reached for a blanket. I signed safe. She didn't answer, but she stayed beside me until the lamp clicked off. The next morning, I opened the door and saw her school bag by the bench, zipped and waiting. He showed up on a Sunday just before noon. I saw the black car, first shiny, rented a sticker on the back window that said Nathan Drew for State Assembly. I didn't move from the porch. He adjusted his tie as he walked up the steps, like he was about to shake hands with a donor instead of the mother he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. "I saw the news," he said. "About the custody." I didn't answer. "I want to see her. Just talk. She deserves to know her real family." His words were too smooth, too practiced. The man I raised was still in there somewhere, but buried under ambition and speeches written by someone else. "She has a real family," I said quietly. "She's inside reading." He took off his sunglasses, eyes darting toward the front window. "Look, Mom, this isn't about politics, isn't it? She's my daughter. You made that clear when you gave her away without a name." He winced, but not enough. Inside, the door creaked. Eleni had been listening. She always listened more than people expected. That night, she didn't eat much. Just pushed her food around, then signed slowly. Was I too hard for them? My hands stilled. I moved them carefully so she'd see each word clearly. "You were perfect. They were not." She watched me a long time before nodding. Then she got up, took her plate to the sink, and rinsed it in silence. Later, I stood at the kitchen window and watched the yard grow darker. The wind picked up, and the wind chime clinked against the side of the porch, sharp, uneven notes that didn't match, but still made a kind of music. Eleni passed behind me with her school folder tucked under her arm. She didn't look back, but before she turned down the hallway, she signed one word over her shoulder. Enough. The courthouse smelled like waxed floors and old paper. I sat beside Eleni at the long wooden table, her hands resting in her lap, fingers tapping her thumbs in a slow, steady rhythm. Nathan wore a navy suit. Vanessa arrived late, her eyes already damp, a tissue clutched tight between her fingers like a prop. They sat across from us, whispering to their attorney, stealing glances at Eleni like she might somehow recognize them now and run into their arms. She didn't. They both spoke of regret. Vanessa wiped tears before they fell. Nathan said words like growth and healing, said they were young, then scared. Said they wanted another chance. They gave her up, I reminded the court. Not because they had to. Because they chose to. The judge turned to Eleni. Would you like to speak, Eleni? She stood back straight and signed slowly, clearly. They left me in a box. The room held its breath. Her interpreter's voice cracked slightly as she repeated it out loud. Nathan looked down. Vanessa's mouth opened, then shut. The judge asked, "Can you explain what you mean?" Eleni kept signing. They didn't want me. Not when I cried. Not when I was quiet. Not when I needed them. They didn't even give me a name. I didn't move. I didn't look at Nathan. My hands remained still in my lap. The judge nodded and said nothing for a long moment. Then she made her ruling. Custody would remain with me. Permanently. Outside the courtroom, Eleni held my sleeve lightly. Not like a child needing comfort, but like someone anchoring herself in something she'd chosen. We didn't celebrate. We just walked to the car step by step, side by side. That night, as I folded laundry in the living room, she walked in with a drawing she'd made. It was the same box from her memory, but this time the lid was open. Light was spilling out. She handed it to me, then sat down to help fold the towels. She stayed. No more courtrooms. No more caseworkers. Just the two of us and the slow rhythm of ordinary days filling the quiet. She painted her room in muted tones she picked herself. I stood on a step stool while she handed me brushes. We didn't rush it. Between coats, we shared crackers and root beer. She asked if she could hang her drawings, no frames, just tape. I nodded. The walls bloomed with color. On a rainy Saturday, we went to the animal shelter. She signed Old Cat, Quiet One. The staff led us to a gray tabby curled up in a box, nearly deaf, mostly bones. She named him Henry. Said he didn't need to hear her to understand her. I understood that. Weeks passed. We slipped into a routine that didn't feel borrowed. Her laughter started coming easier. She'd leave jokes on the fridge and sticky note ASL drawings. I left riddles in return. Sometimes she rolled her eyes, but she always answered. One afternoon, while putting away laundry, I opened her drawer and found the baby blanket, the one I brought to the hospital all those years ago. Still folded. She must have taken it from my closet. She had smoothed the corners like it mattered. I didn't ask why. I just closed the drawer and sat with that feeling for a while. The next morning, over toast and orange slices, she signed home. Not in a sentence, not as a correction, just the word clear and certain as she sat at our kitchen table in Henry's old sweatshirt. I didn't respond right away. I just reached across the table, brushed a crumb off her cheek, and signed mine, but soft, not to claim, only to recognize. She grinned, pulled the jam closer, and spread it too thick. I let it slide. Later that day, she asked if she could speak at the youth night for deaf students downtown. I told her, "If you want to tell your story, I'll be right there." 2 years passed, and the spring evening air smelled like something new. I sat in the back row of the auditorium, hands folded neatly in my lap, trying not to squeeze the fabric of my dress too tightly. The stage lights warmed the students in soft gold. Some used interpreters. Some signed with fire in their fingers. Some trembled and smiled through it. Then Eleni stepped forward. She wore her hair pulled back and her shoes untied. That's how she always walked into things, part prepared, part flying. The room hushed before she even began. "My name is Eleni Drew." She signed each motion. Clear, paced, steady. "I'm 15. I live with my grandmother. She found me. The interpreter's voice echoed those words softly, but my eyes never left Elaine's hands. She paused, looked up, looked toward the back row, toward me. Then she signed one word, always. It wasn't part of the speech. It wasn't in the printed program. It wasn't for the room. It was for me. Something inside me folded, not with pain, but with peace, like pages finally closing after a story had been told. The applause came after a beat, then loud and rising. Elaine smiled, ducked her head, and stepped down. She didn't come to me right away. She stayed by the stage, talking with the others, laughing, arms moving, eyes lit. She didn't need me at that moment. And that was how I knew she was truly mine. On the drive home, she played music I didn't know the words to. She tapped the beat on the dashboard, then signed bad lyrics, laughing to herself. I didn't ask what they meant. I just tapped along. At the red light, she looked out the window, then turned and signed. Next year, I want to speak again. I nodded. She reached over and squeezed my wrist. The light changed. We drove on,